I want to share with you a short passage from this gorgeous little book called The Life of the Bee. It's by a chap called Maurice Maeterlinck. And it was given to me by a gentleman called Peter, who often walks with Robin and the dogs, Amber and Misha, in the mornings. And obviously he heard I was a beekeeper, so he gave this to Robin to give to me. And it's absolutely fabulous. I want to read this passage because I was reading it this morning. I've just started reading it. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, he writes like a poet. It's absolutely beautiful. And one of the things I tell people when I start my talks is why I love being a beekeeper and what made me want to carry on with the bees and eventually lead to my writing 2 children's books and giving talks. And that was the very first moment that a hive was opened up to me. And I just say, you know, for me, as I stood there suited and booted, absolutely not knowing what to expect, possibly that Winnie the Pooh moment when all the bees would come up like a swarm and I'd be next scene running down a field being chased by a swarm of bees. That didn't happen. The lid was lifted and the little bees that were in the hive did nothing. The odd flying bee came and had a look at me, but went away. But all those bees that were in the hive did nothing. And I was hooked. I was fascinated by these little creatures who I really only knew for collecting honey and when they sting, they die, and the stings jolly well hurt. So I was enthralled, and they captivated me in that first moment, and that's what led me on to becoming a beekeeper and writing children's books and wanting to tell everybody all about them. And also a question I throw out to people, because I like my talks to be interactive, is what do you think a smoker is? Why do you think we use smokers? And I would say 7 times out of 10 people will say because it calms them down. And I always say no, it doesn't. The bees, when the smoke goes into the hive, they think there is a fire nearby, and so they go down from the tops of the frames and they start filling their tummies with honey so that they can take off with all the reserves they need should the fire get nearer to their hive, and they're ready, prepared for their journey on to their next home. So that's always my explanation. And here, in a chapter called On the Threshold of a Hive, which incidentally I'm going to steal and call my talks. I call them Creating a Buzz About the Bees, but I love On the Threshold of a Hive because I feel that as a beekeeper, no matter how much we go into their hives and we can look inside their hive, we're always standing on the threshold of the hive. We'll never be a part of it. We'll never be, obviously, totally be able to be immersed in there. We can only observe from the outside what's going on inside. So from this chapter called On the Threshold of a Hive, he describes the first time that a hive was open, and he talks about the smoker, but he does it in a poetical way. Now, I'm not a good reader, forgive me. I will do my best to do this little chapter justice, but it's so beautiful, I wanted to read it to you. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I do, and maybe it will make you want to take your first look in a hive. Who knows? Okay, here we go. The first time that we open a hive, there comes over us an emotion akin to that we might feel at profaning some unknown object, charged perhaps with dreadful surprise, as a tomb. A legend of menace and peril still clings to the bee. There is the distressful recollection of her sting, which produces a pain so characteristic, a kind of destroying dryness, a flame of the desert rushing over the wounded limb, as though these daughters of the sun had distilled a dazzling poison from their father's angry rays, in order more effectively to defend the treasure they gather from his beneficent hours. It is true that were someone who neither knows nor respects the customs and characters of the bees suddenly to fling open the hive, it would turn at once into a burning bush of heroism and anger. But the slight amount of skill that is needed to handle it with impunity can be most readily acquired. Let but a little smoke be deftly applied, much coolness and gentleness be shown, and our well-armed workers will suffer themselves to be despoiled without dreaming of drawing their sting. It is not, in fact, as some have maintained, that the bees recognise their master, nor have they any fear of man, but at the smell of the smoke, at the large slow gestures that traverse their dwellings without threatening them, they imagine that this is not the attack of an enemy against whom defence is possible, but that it is a force or a natural catastrophe whereto they do well to submit. Instead of vainly struggling, therefore, they do what they can to safeguard the future, and obeying a foresight that for once is in error, they fly to their reserves of honey, into which they eagerly dip in order to possess within themselves the wherewithal to start a new city, immediately and no matter where, should the ancient one be destroyed or they be compelled to forsake it. Wow, isn't that just the most beautiful way of describing going into a hive, or your first feelings when a hive is opened up before you, and of course the bees' instinct to sting or not to sting, and the gentle use of a smoker. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I'm enjoying reading it, and as you can see, I'm enjoying it so much I wanted to share it with you. Thank you for listening. If you want any more information about the honeybees, my website details should be below there, and I'd look forward to hearing from you.